Right, so M4 Mac Week has begun, people, and we have our first Mac, which is the M4 iMac. There are some interesting changes. It's actually a bigger update than we were expecting, and so let's delve into everything. So obviously at the center of this is the brand new M4 chipset, which is not really brand new because we saw it a few months ago with the iPad Pros, but now it's in a Mac, which is very cool. And obviously this is a decent upgrade over the M3. Here are the benchmarks, here are the specs. It's this amount better than the M3, so yay. But jokes aside, actually is a decent upgrade over the M3 because it's based on the TSMC N3E process, which is much more efficient. But that's not the big news of the day, guys. The groundbreaking change has to be 16 gigs of RAM as standard. I never thought this day would come, but Timothy has finally been gracious and has given us 16 gigs of RAM for the same price as standards. I can't believe it, guys. I'm about to faint in excitement because obviously this makes this new iMac much better value than the outgoing M3 version. You can now comfortably get the base model and not sell your kidney to upgrade the RAM, so that is very awesome news. You know what else is just as awesome as 16 gigs of RAM? Subscribing to this channel, of course. I would greatly appreciate it and would bring you the latest about Apple right to subscription box, so please consider it. The button is below. Join the saranbyte gang now. Now, because 16 gigs is the standard, you can now get 32 gigs of RAM with the M4 chipset. That's a nice boost over M3, which supported a max of 24 gigs. And also you now get a new 12 megapixel center stage camera on the front. So this is the camera we see on iPads and also the studio display. And it means that, of course, if you move around, the camera tracks you, which is very awesome. And you also get a desk view, which means you can now record your face and also an overhead shot of your desk at the same time. That is very neat. Though I do vaguely remember some quality issues with the studio display's front-facing camera, so I do wonder how this compares to a traditional webcam on other Macs. But either way, guys, I love myself some center stage, and so I'm glad the iMac now has it. We also get a nano texture display option with the iMac for the first time. This is really not worth it for the high price they charge, but hey, if you have extra money to splurge on your new iMac purchase, you can now get this fancy texture. And finally, we have USB-C accessories at last. So yes, the keyboard, the trackpad, and the mouse now all charge via Type-C. That's awesome. Lightning is finally dead. And also the icing on the cake has to be Thunderbolt 4 support with the actual iMac machine itself. However, that Thunderbolt 4 upgrade only applies to the higher end models. And actually, let's talk about the base model real quick because it does get 16 gigs of RAM as standard. That's awesome, but there is no storage upgrade. It's still 256 gigs at the base. That's fine, to be honest, because you can use external storage, whereas RAM is not upgradable down the line. Also, the base model does have a bin chip, so it's an 8-core CPU and an 8-core GPU, and also has less ports. But it does get the wide range of new colors the iMac offers, because yes, after being lazy with the M3 refresh, they finally gave us some new shades, and I must say the new orange and green are quite snazzy. Also, thank you Apple for not being extra lazy and actually giving us some new wallpapers. The new wallpaper actually spells out iMac, which is very nice. So yes, thank you for giving us some visual changes. Now, of course, Apple's still shoving down Apple Intelligence down our throats, and that's really the main thing they're talking about with this iMac refresh. But beside from that, this is a pretty decent upgrade on the whole. It's definitely a lot more substantial than we expected, and 16 gigs of RAM as standard is again a big upgrade and makes us much better value. Also, it has actually got cheaper in the UK, so it's £100 cheaper, now with double the RAM. That's awesome news for us UK folks. But in the US, it's the same price, and pre-orders begin today and it will be available in stores next Friday. So yeah, these are shipping very soon. And of course, this is not the only Mac we're getting this week. Apple's confirmed there's 2 more announcements coming this week. And of course, we know what that is. That's the MacBook Pro and the iMac. And so let's delve into what to expect with those, because there's been a bevy of rumors. And of course, my hairstyle, beards, and also my shirt may change, but gloss over that. Anyways, let's delve into some tidbits regarding these Macs. And to be honest, we already know quite a lot about the MacBooks, because of course Russian dudes have already unboxed them and have basically shown us everything, so let's first delve into that. Number 1, this unboxing video does confirm that Shrimp Apple Pro's previous leak was legit after all, and Apple is indeed being pretty lazy with the packaging and they're just reusing the M3 boxes. I know many were surprised by this on Twitter, but let me remind you guys, the M3 MacBook Airs had the same wallpaper and box as the M2 model, so personally I'm not too surprised. They've got to maintain those high margins somehow. Though I will mention that the M2 MacBook Pros have the same wallpaper on the packaging, but the marketing material featured a new wallpaper. So yeah, the same could apply here. Now you may be wondering, why do I care so much about a bloody wallpaper? Well, of course, when the design's not changing, that's the only visual change we can look forward to, and I love myself some snazzy new Apple wallpapers. Anyways, let's move on to the main hardware changes with the M4 MacBook Pro, and for the most part, it's a chipset refresh. This is the base model that's being covered in this unboxing, and of course, that has the brand new M4 chipset. The packaging reveals the base model now has a 10-core CPU compared to 8 CPU cores with the current M3. They also ran a Geekbench test to give us a better idea of the performance upgrades, and while M4 achieved a single-core score of 3864 and a multi-core score of 15288, and the GPU Metal score was 57603. Now those are many big numbers, but basically what you need to know is that this is a whopping 4% faster than the M4 iPad Pro, but what's actually more exciting is that the base M4 is now on par with the M3 Pro and M2 Max, which is pretty crazy to think about. The next change is even more exciting because the packaging also reveals 16 gigs of RAM could be the minimum for all Macs from here on, and thank you Apple gods for finally giving us this. They're listening at last, because we've been begging for them to get rid of 8 gig Macs for years, and this alone would be a big reason to get the M4. In fact, I would say single-handedly the main thing that disappointed me with last year's M3 MacBook Pro was the fact it came with 8 gigs of standards. Otherwise, it was a terrific machine, and so I'm happy to see Timothy's listening to us and has been gracious enough to give us 16 gigs of RAM. Thank you very much. Now, of course, I'm aware it's not clear this is the base model, but usually the models produced in bulk before release are the base models. Those are the ones everyone buys, and so I think 16 gigs will be the new minimum. Storage has not changed, it stays at 512, but that's enough for most consumers. And do remember, you do have the choice to use external storage, whereas RAM is not upgradable, so it's important they upgrade that over the storage. We also see 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports on the M4 model, which is another new upgrade because do remember the base M3 had 1 less port, so we do now have feature parity across the range in this aspect. What's also coming from more expensive models are new color options. And actually I just mean one new color, because Space Black is now here on the base M4. With the M3 models, you are forced to go for the M3 Pro if you wanted this, or else you had to settle for the horrible space gray finish. So I'm glad it's finally coming down to the base model. The Mac Mini, however, will be getting a new design with a much smaller chassis that's more in line with the Apple TV. Here's a comparison picture of the current and possible new design by TechGod on Twitter, and you can see how drastic the redesign is going to be. TechGod even theorizes that we could see elements of the Mac Studio design with this new Mac Mini, which I think could make sense. I would also like to see a space black option similar to how they offered a space grey Mac Mini in 2018, but then again, colors don't really matter with a metal box that's going to be tucked away in the corner. Now in terms of I/O, there's going to be a HDMI 2.1 port, 3 Thunderbolt ports on the back and 2 on the front, which is a massive upgrade over the current M2 model that features 2 Thunderbolt ports. And so breaking news guys, for once Apple's making the product smaller, but giving us more ports. It's unheard of, but it's happening. Now what's also unheard of is that Apple's keeping the price exactly the same according to Gurman. This case is going to be cheaper to build apparently, and so it's really rare we see a new design and also no price increase. Anyways, thank you for watching guys, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors, and on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one.